some of the biggest tech companies in the world are cloud companies, or cloud is a big part of their business. Apparently, cloud is the only option. Is it so? Are there situations when we shouldn't use the cloud and maybe we should do it more in an old-fashioned way, on-premise kind of development?
Indeed, the cloud is very appealing, but I would say it's not going to apply to all kind of businesses. It depends. And I can give you a very simple example of a company which didn't got in fully engaged in the cloud, and that one is Netflix.
Oh.
And why? They said they will get bankrupt in less than 3 weeks if they would keep their streaming services in whatever cloud, which has this kind of and most of the cloud companies, it's a very big chunk, a cash cow, the egress traffic.
Mm-hmm. So what does Netflix do? Do they have their own data centers, or?
Indeed. In order to have the best experience, at least in the business case of Netflix, they send servers to a lot of providers. For example, in Romania, DG, Orange, Vodafone. So they send physical servers with pre-installed disk, whatever. So whenever a customer will consume, let's say, some series, it will be streamed very near to him in order to achieve that 4K streaming quality.
I had no idea about this. This is fascinating.
Yeah, that's the way it works. And you basically try to keep the cost low. So they've decided to go to something that we in the IT industry is called hybrid infrastructure, hybrid cloud. So some of the services are externalized to cloud, but everything related to the streaming part will be kept low and sent to ISPs.
So probably things like, I don't know, authentication services and catalog management and whatever are in the cloud, because they're centralized. Yeah. But that's not the majority of the data. The majority of the data is the movies.
Yeah, exactly. The movie catalog in itself, it will be probably they have a protocol which distributes in a very smart way. Whenever they need to stream a new series which will be very popular, and it's announced that it will be very popular, probably they will broadcast it everywhere, so it's ready to be consumed from the edges. Let's call it edge servers.
Is there any other case where you can think that a company might not prefer to go into the cloud?
Yeah, I would say there are multiple ones, especially those ones which they're not sure that the cloud can inspire trust for governance of the data, medical or whatever, govern data, military, whatever. Probably they're very skeptical in going in a public cloud. If they have the money and the power, probably the government or military part of a country, they could do their own private cloud.
Yeah. And also, like, a smaller example is Levi has that internal AI, Levin, a large language model. It's deployed internally on a computer somewhere because you need the security and the privacy.
Yeah, exactly. It's open source. Another reason was the cost, the monthly cost. Why you don't want to go in the cloud? Because in the long term, it's too expensive to keep it there, because the service in itself is very appealing. You don't manage it, you just upgrade it to next finish and it's ready and running. But when the hardware in itself is not that expensive anymore. So you could buy, for example, a Mac Mini. We did this. We had to choose, are we going to host, I'm talking about a build system for application for iOS, for iPhone specifically. And the decision was, are we going to buy a hardware that we keep in Levi9 server room for the customer, and it's going to cost less than 1,500, or you go in whatever cloud, in our case it's AWS, and you're going to pay like at least $500 per month.
What?
Yes, that's the same hardware. The same hardware. There are some way to get a 30% discount on the long term. So if you buy a saving plan,
in a few months you recoup the investment. Yeah. What are the alternatives to the cloud? Okay, for example, say Netflix, they can do their own thing there. But if you're like a small business, what do? Do you just go buy computers and put them in a room and install an UPS, or is there other alternatives to a public cloud like AWS, for example, or any of them?
The business in itself will dictate where you should go, or what constraints do you have. Yes, you could do that, and if you have the technical knowledge, you could host it by yourself. Mm-hmm. But you need to take in consideration that's applicable also to cloud, also to on-premise. The best practices of building a infrastructure, it should be applied anywhere. So if you need to have a disaster recovery for your data, a disaster recovery plan, no matter for where it is. Mm-hmm. So if you have it on-premise and if you have a flood, if your server room it's let's say a quarter of your garage, because you have solar panels and you say, okay, my cooling is for free, mm-hmm. the ISP is almost free. I bought some very cheap hardware from decommissioned cloud. Probably they're doing some. So you bought like 1 metric cube of servers. Yes, you could do something like this, but the question is it reliable enough? If reliability is not a thing for you, and if your customers can support it, yes, you can go. The big guys. If you build your infrastructure, a region in a cloud, mm-hmm. it's composed from 3 data centers, which are at least 100 kilometers away from each other. So a region from Google or from Azure or from AWS, there will be 3 data centers, and if you have a flood, if your infrastructure is spread across those 3, so whenever something happens, only a third of your business, and if you have the policies in order for things to recover, they will scale up in the existing ones. So the impact is very reduced.
And you can also, sorry to interrupt you could also have redundancy across multiple regions, right?
Multiple clouds.
If it requires.
If it requires,
you can have even multiple clouds.
Yeah, if you can go cloud agnostic. Either you love the cloud or hate it. You need to embrace it.
Choose one. Yeah.
Choose one and try to squeeze or leverage the advantages of that cloud.
How does cloud agnostic work? So I assume there's some open source framework or something which abstracts the cloud ideas, mm-hmm. and then you just click deploy on AWS or on Google or whatever. Does it work? Or I'm sure it works.
Does.
Does it work well?
And some companies try to. Probably there are some companies which try to squeeze the best price from whatever cloud.
Yeah.
So in order to be this flexibility, if you build your business or your infrastructure for your business in this way, mm-hmm. so you want to whenever. There are some pricing models which are called spot. So you have like a around 90% discount on resources in cloud. So you can leverage those. So you can go in the cloud which gives you those kind of discounts.
So you mentioned in one of our conversations that we have public, private, and hybrid clouds. I mean, public, it's easy to understand, AWS, Azure, Google, others. Private, again, easy to understand. What is a hybrid cloud?
The hybrid cloud, how the name says, could be your on-premise, connected through some way of communication with the cloud. So for security reasons, you keep some data in your on-premise.
Okay.
If you need to do leverage some cloud services, which if it's GDPR, you keep it in your cloud.
You keep personal data.
Personal data
what you can do.
Whatever.
Non-personal data stuff on the cloud.
In the cloud.
And I assume you have to architect your application with this in mind. You have to know from the beginning. This part needs to be private. This part we can use the cloud and how it's going to communicate.
You classify your data very well, and you need to know what you don't move, where you don't move it. Probably also. Some of the governments work this way. Some of the banking companies will do the same way.
This is not like if you're on Azure and you want to move to AWS or the other way around or whatever. It's not like a day of work or 2 days of work or 3 days. So it's like a full project, right? You need a team, you need months, you need work, you need, for a serious application.
Yeah, serious application.
You move a blog anyway.
I've joined one of the migration projects like 7 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah, no. Just to give you more context, the project was started like 2 years before. This is the one of the top 3 retailers from Netherlands.
Okay, so it's probably a very complex solution.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So those guys, they had everything on premise.
Oh, okay.
They had a monolithic, a lot of application, ASP.NET, and they wanted in the project of migration to cloud started in around 2014, 2015. And we finished it in around 2021.
6 or 7 years. Yeah.
6 or 7 years just to break that monolith. They gone from monolith to microservices in AWS.
Okay.
We were 30 or 40 people in Levi9 and around 100 in Netherlands. So it's not big. It's a medium, let's say, number of developers. And after that, being already in cloud, they migrated from, at that time was bleeding edge in 2014, microservice platform. It was something with Mesos Marathon. The geek guys will really know what I'm talking about with auto discovery, really fancy stuff. And in the last, from 2021 until 2000, very recently, they reshifted the whole infrastructure from the old platform to Kubernetes. So
Okay.
it's not,
Which is also a couple of years of work.
yeah, but it's like 2.5, but not
Not 7.
not 7.
Yeah. The decision to choose a particular cloud provider should be taken very seriously.
Yeah.
Because while migration is possible, and if you build it agnostic, it might be easier.
Yeah,
it's still not trivial, and you don't want to do it without
Maybe
a
it's
very
not-
good reason.
And maybe it's not recommended to go agnostic, because if you're going to develop in an agnostic way, things will take longer to build.
And not be as efficient.
You deleverage yourself from doing some work when you can consume a really efficient service,
Yeah.
which they offer it compelling cheap to something that you manage.
Because by definition, an agnostic solution can only use the kind of services that all the cloud providers
Exactly.
have.
Yeah, that's the
Whatever AWS has specific, or Azure has specific to it, or Google, they can't use it because it can't be translated.
In nowadays, the agnostic, it would be everything should be in containers,
Yeah.
or everything should be run in virtual machines or something similar. The moment you step out of a virtual machine or a Docker, you're
Yeah.
asking for custom stuff from a specific provider.
Well, like you said, if I don't know, AWS has a specific service which they found out a way to calculate prime numbers really fast.
Yeah.
And it's called AWS prime
number.
factorization. And
Yeah, exactly.
if you want to call that service, you can't migrate to Azure without a lot of
No.
refactoring because they don't have that.
You need to build your own
Or the other way
prime,
around. Yeah.
Factorization.
Vendor lock-in. So yes, you have that cloud agnostic approach. Sometimes you don't want it, or you can't use it, or it's preferable not to use it. How big of a problem is vendor locked in? What can you tell me about this?
If you want to consume cloud properly, there's no way around vendor locking in. Once you integrate with a specific cloud, hopefully you don't want to migrate from that cloud only if you have a really ugly situation of performance. Just to give some context, right around the corner, we're going to migrate a company which is running in Azure. We're going to migrate it in AWS. Why do they want to migrate? The big reason is because the lack of support and the performance of the application that they use, it's so bad, and those guys are not responding. They had also 3 days of downtime.
Yeah, nobody said anything.
Nobody, and their application was really slow. So they said, okay, this is enough. We're going to migrate.
Architecting correctly an application for the cloud, designing for the cloud, architecting for the cloud, doing things with the cloud in mind. Can you tell me a little bit about that? What does that mean? Are there any guidelines for how you
Yeah.
should write your applications if you want to put them in the cloud?
The cloud itself, at least for the last 3 or 4 years, they've seen the same problems to multiple customers.
Oh, yeah.
So they realized, we see this pattern that people develop application and not very well architected. So they developed a framework, in AWS they call well-architected framework.
Okay.
And if you go through some knowledge gathering, some boot camps, if you're at a specific level of knowledge in AWS, you can start doing well-architected reviews. And it's a process where you can go to a business and you go through performance, security, cost efficiency, resiliency, operation excellence, and sustainability, the last pillar.
You mean someone like you from Levi is certified to offer services to your clients to review how well their applications are architected for the cloud? Okay.
Yeah, usually, in particular, why you want some people which already have been exposed to, let's say, most of the services, and they, from the years' experience, they know how things should look, and through the certifications themselves, you do a lot of hands-on, and you practice how the cloud in itself and the services should be aligned in order to work the most efficient way. And also, you're also rewarded by, at least in our case, AWS, to fix your high-risk issues. Because
how do they reward you?
The idea behind the whole framework is, if I have a healthy customer from the business perspective, he's going to be my customer for the next years. But if he has security issues, he's going to be ransomware.
I might lose a customer.
Yeah, exactly. Probably what I should highlight is that the cloud in itself, when you do cloud development, try to develop with all those well-architected pillars in mind. Don't neglect the costs. You need to don't do educated guesses or document yourself. So develop it securely, performant, resilient, cost efficient, and also make sure you have the right people when stuff doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
So try to at least have all those in place when you develop, because any of those, if the people that you hire do not come to work, yeah. So if you get hacked, if your bill sprawls, if your performance goes down, yeah, you need to take into consideration that it's a one thing.
One thing is enough to crash your business if it's bad enough.